Why YouTube takes
Facebook, YouTube.
YouTube's
coming. Oh, YouTube's.
Got it. Got it. And I think we are now live on the Facebooks.
Cool. All right. Good morning, everybody. Episode 42. Show's gonna catch up to my age soon. But I think it's past its physical prime, but maybe mentally it's still improving. Okay, so welcome to our weekly Q&A live chat session. This is a time where we answer questions about all things 034, anything about automotive, certainly the history of the company, maintenance experience, cooking recipes, relationship advice, we know a little bit about everything. So hit us up, but usually we end up talking about 034 products and services. And we usually try to debunk some myths, and as always, we have a no BS policy. So we're always going for the truth and trying to cut through all the magic and the smoke and mirrors and stuff like that. If we say anything or talk about anything that you don't agree with, let us know. If you don't understand something we said, feel free to follow up. Always happy to clarify. So we have some questions from last week we can jump into. So let's see. First question is, do you guys offer custom tuning for the DS1 on the C7S6? Well, it's not something that we currently offer on our website. However, we are developing a 4.0T tuning program, and we'd like to look into working with DS1. We have a lot of respect for the Dyno Spectrum guys and their product. Obviously, it's received a lot of enthusiasm and support in the market from customers. The one thing I want to kind of further explain is, and this is like nothing to do with whether DS1's good or bad. We think it's good. But DS1 is it's kind of two things. It's one, a flashing tool to flash a file onto a car, and it's also a software tuning interface that allows the end user to tune the factory ECU much like a standalone. So they have a graphical user interface that they've created that accesses the maps in the ECU and allows fuel, timing, all the different engine running parameters to be adjusted. So for like a small tuner, someone who doesn't have flashing capabilities, so in other words, they could create a calibration on the dyno, but they have no way to flash that to anyone else's car, certainly not remotely. DS1's a godsend because it allows, let's say you have ABC tuning in Iowa, and they know how to flash, or they know how to tune a file, but they have no way to flash it. So they buy a DS1, they put their file on the DS1, and then they ship that to the customer, and now the customer can flash their car with ABC Tuning's file in Iowa. That's not something we necessarily need. 034 Motorsport is, we're an established tuner. We have our own flashing server. We have our own cables. So we're already able to flash and distribute files. So we don't necessarily need DS1 to do that. Where DS1 would be an option for us is, let's say we create a big turbo file for the 4.0T, and based on what turbo you're running, there may be a few different map tweaks that are required, or optimizations that could be made based on what you end up doing. And so we could send an optimized calibration file to the customer on DS1, and then they could go on the dyno and continue to develop and tweak that file to make it more optimal for them.
Yeah, it would be for anything that you'd want to do outside of what we would provide. So outside of our normal support or our normal flashing, because we can make tweaks, we can send tweaks, and use flashes through our current cables. So it would be, for us, it's a redundant tool in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
For customer support and flashing.
But I think a lot of people out in the market they kind of conflate DS1 with the files and the tunes, and the DS1 is different than the tune or the calibration. So I want to be clear about that. So we will at some point release our own tunes. We don't need DS1 to get that onto the customer ECU. The only time that we would need or we would offer a DS1 is in that situation where the file could be further tweaked or optimized. Now, for example, our B8 3.0 T tuning, there's absolutely no need for us to do that. Our file is already optimized. There's really nothing that the customer is going to be able to do to improve on it with a DS1. So we won't need for that service. But I think another great application for DS1 is in like DAZA 2.5T, where again you've got 800 horsepower. Can you get 850 if you could just tweak the timing map a little bit based on your particular configuration with the custom intake you have and the custom downpipe, and then you have an exhaust that you take off, and so you can go in there and tweak the tuning and turn the boost up or down, or smooth out the boost curve, or reduce the boost at the torque peak so you don't damage the drivetrain. That's all great stuff you could do with DS1. But again, you don't need DS1 to simply flash your car with a tune. So I want to be clear about that. I think there's a whole spectrum of people, especially in the 4.0T market, who just associate DS1 with 4.8T tuning, and they think they're somehow linked together. And the files and the tuning, the calibrations are separate from DS1.
Yeah, and I mean they have their own files and base files.
And they do their own, which are DS1 file. They're Dyno Spectrum files. They're not DS1. DS1's the cable flashing products. But anyway, so we are looking for ways to work more closely with DS1 again. Since we're a bigger established tuner with our own flashing resources, we won't benefit from that part of their service like a smaller shop would. But again, for the customers who want to further tweak and calibrate their own tunes, it's a great option that we will be looking into, and certainly I hope that we can get to a point where we're offering that. All right. Someone's asking, is fuel quality consistent around the world? Well,
I mean, it's not consistent around the town usually.
What do you mean?
I mean, you can get some stations where they're running a different blend for winter mixes and whatnot, depending on given states. They can change pretty dramatically, even just bordering states have different requirements for fuel mixes and whatnot. So I'll give them 91 or 93 octane may perform differently, not too far apart from each other.
What was the question? Is
fuel quality the same?
Specifically,
but well, I don't know. Let's just talk about the U.S. for a second. So what Nate's talking about is, I wouldn't say that's related to quality. I would say that's related to
specification. Specification. What you're It's not that they're fluctuating wildly at a given day.
Somebody is peeing in the gas tank at one gas station or the other. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but I would say generally speaking, fuel quality in the U.S. is excellent because it's very tightly regulated. There are pretty strict laws and rules within the oil refining fuel industry that create very strict regulations for what can pass as 91 octane, what can pass as 87 octane or whatever. Now, specifications from different states and areas can vary. And so that if that specification change negatively impacts the tuning, then I guess you could say it's lower quality. Generally speaking, in my experience, I think the whole "I got a bad tank of fuel" thing is way overblown, and often people blame a bad tank of fuel on a myriad of other actual real problems. Not to say that it hasn't happened, but I've been tuning cars for over 20 years, and I'm not sure I've ever gotten a bad tank of gas. I've come across bad gas like sitting in some unmarked 5-gallon jug next to the dyno. But generally speaking, fuel quality and specifications are very highly regulated here in the U.S. I would say the same for Europe and any developed countries, certainly Canada, and I'm sure Australia has very good fuel. I don't, Mexico's kind of it's hard to say. I can't personally say
Yeah, I don't have enough
if I
sample
know.
size to know what to rely on.
I would be shocked if it was that bad. I would really be shocked because, again, creating fuel of certain specifications has been being done for almost 100 years now in humanity. So the guess is it's probably a 91 octane in Mexico is probably something you can. But if you have any concerns, certainly fill it up and do some logs and monitor the ignition timing or correction and go from there. But there could be more online. I've never heard of it being a problem.
No, just availability.
I've been to Mexico a bunch of times.
If you can get 91 or 93, it should be okay. If it's the highest you can get is 87.
Yeah. I mean, I don't recommend drinking water in Mexico. I don't know if that has, if you can draw a correlation between their ability to refine the water and the gas, but yeah, I can't say for sure. So, all right. Any other thoughts on that?
No.
We have another question really fast at the top.
They eat too many beans. What's going on? What's the difference between raw octane ratings and AKI ratings, and how does that affect what tune I should run?
Yeah, so I mean, all of our octane ratings, because we're US based, are mono over 2 or AKI. There's some pretty simple. You can look up online what correlates between them, but generally speaking, like our 93 vals here in the US would be essentially equivalent to like a 98 RON in Europe or the other countries that use a raw octane rating. So and then 91 here would be about a 95 generally.
Yeah,
it's held up really well. We haven't had too much, or we haven't had any issue running our similarly mapped files around the world.
Yeah, and you can Google this. It's readily available information online. Kind of the correlations between mon and ron. So, but yeah, I know a lot of people get confused because it's 91 octane in both places or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know if it's beneficial to have the heads ported and polished, oversized valves, etc., in the V6 turbo or the V6T B8 engines, if heading for better flow coupled with a ported charger? We don't know, as far as we haven't done a cylinder head porting development program. Given the fact that it can benefit any engine, I would say yes.
Physics still work in the same.
Yeah. If you can move air through the cylinder head more efficiently with less restriction or pressure drop, then you can make more power. With that said, there's no such thing as a port job. There's all the different port jobs, are all the different possibilities of when you start removing material from a cylinder head. So just because a head's ported, I wouldn't say it performs better. In fact, more often than not, I would say, in my experience, many port heads lose net flow, which means maybe they flow more at some peak valve lift, but below that they lose velocity, and the amount of air that flows through the port actually drops when you look at the flow area under the curve of the valve opening and closing. So, but yes, if you work with a good porter who knows what they're doing, you can absolutely increase the flow. And typically, even if you're not making the valves bigger, you can profile the valves so they flow more. There's a lot of work that can be done in the valve seats. And so you have your cylinder port, which is cast, and then a valve seat, which is a steel ring, is machined around the port. So as that's machined and the steel seat is pressed into the cylinder head, there's typically irregular flow around how air goes from the port into the valve seat and then through the valve. So that area can always be improved. And there's something called the short side radius, which is the short inside bend of the port, and there's always improvements flow that can be made there. I would ask whoever you work with to show you, flow bench data at different valve lifts, not just at the peak lift. And I would plot the original flow of the cylinder head against the ported flow. And the ported flow should be higher than the original all across all valve lifts. That's the best port job that you could get. So you can't just make up for all the lost flow at maximum valve opening. And you also have to make sure, a lot of cylinder head porters, they'll advertise cylinder head flow at like half-inch of valve lift.
Way outside where the cam ends.
But if the cam's only doing 0.3 inches of lift, then you need to know what's the flow of 3, not half. That doesn't matter. So unless you ever plan on running a half-inch of lift, which I doubt you would. That's really aggressive
On these meters,
yeah. So no simple answer, but yes, it's an option. If we ever did it, we would do all the engineering developments and we would do a CNC program. I don't see us doing that, but maybe we would for some of the parts to do it, and we're looking into that. Will you guys be looking at fixing the oil screen problem in the 4.0T causing premature turbo failure? We've talked about this a few times.
Quite a bit.
We would love to, and it's certainly a problem that needs to be fixed. We kind of looked around, and JHM has a really nice solution. I think we just decided to leave it at that for now. I think there are some other, maybe at least one other company offers something on the market. I'm not sure, but I know we talked about it last year, and it's kind of in our ideas, but I'm not sure we will. When do you expect your customer service loads to get back to normal? It's a good question. We approximately doubled the size of our customer service team in the last year. On average, we're at like a 1 to 2 day response time, which is not great. We'd like to be within 1 day, and at times we are. But we're kind of keeping an eye on how this year goes. A big issue that we have that we had last year was our out of stock levels. Due to initially to COVID and supply chain disruptions all around the world, including in the US, we just didn't have a lot of product in stock. In fact, at one point, over half of the products we sell were out of stock. And so as you can imagine, that creates a kind of vicious cycle of customer service. We don't have the products, so then the customers contact us asking when their order is going to ship, and it just, it escalates. So good news is we less than 10% of our products right now are out of stock, where we should be about 100% in stock in the next month. That's our goal that we're working towards. So that in of itself reduces the customer service inquiries tremendously to the point where it's
by far the biggest burden on customer service.
Where right now it's like, where's my order? 200 people a day are asking, where's my order? Well, that's a lot of work. If we can get down to 10 people a day asking, where's my order, then we can start getting our response times down. So just to give you some insight, I think that's our out of stock position has helped. Now, the more business we do, the more inquiries we get. And so we're doing our best to get back to those within one business day. But I think sometimes the frustrations, I see people post and say, I emailed 034 3 days ago and I still haven't heard anything. And we go look, and it's like, okay, you sent an email Friday at 2 p.m. We're closed on the weekend. So that's 2 days. And, they would have gotten a response like later that day on Monday or possibly Tuesday, which is technically, less than 2 business days. But anyways, so we're doing our best. I mean, if there's anything specific, certainly let us know. But I think things have improved tremendously since the worst last year was probably July through December. We were really hammered.
Yeah, we had the whole supply chain.
Yeah.
Kind of had to figure out how to recalibrate for the new world.
Yep. For the 3.0T, what pulley ratio do you guys recommend for the most efficient power? Man, we talk about this every week. Every week.
it really depends on what you're looking to do. The most efficient power is unfortunately going to be basically stage one. You're going to get the most power for a given amount of air coming into the motor just because you're not turning as much of that into heat. If you want, the most amount of power, that's going to depend on the rest of your supporting mods, what fuel you've got available, what your goals are for the car. If you're only going to be doing quarter mile stuff with it, then you can usually go a little bit bigger. If you want to do rotor stuff, you need to step down to something that will allow you to maintain the temperatures. So there's not a single pulley option that's the answer for everybody.
But your favorite combination is?
I like running this like our 179 lower with our upper. So that's what's on my car now. There's generally on it.
There's got to be a few clips we could post about this, but
because my car makes a little more power on the 190 pulley, but it's also making more heat, and it's tougher to keep thermally managed with bigger and bigger pulleys.
Yeah, I think it's like running a marathon. Could you run faster right now? Sure, but you want to finish the race. If you don't finish the race, it doesn't. So the supercharger is the same way. It can spin faster and it can squeeze air harder, but it's diminishing returns after a certain point where the amount of heat overcomes the supercharger's ability to compress air. And as you know, as air heats up, it expands, and the air has to compress in order to create more pressure. So that heat really counteracts the pressure, and that's where the loss of efficiency comes in. Turbochargers, there's flow maps that every manufacturer publishes. I don't know. The flow map for the
it's
out there too.
Yep.
So
it's available from.
You can take a look at that. You can make a little bit more power by spinning even faster and pushing the supercharger even harder, especially if you have the ability to cool post supercharger. But what Nate said is the combination we really recommend for the most efficient setup. Has development started for MQB lower control arms? Yes. We just reviewed this in one of our engineering meetings last week. We are planning on producing a new cast lower control arm with a ball joint, and these will allow more caster and camber and adjustability, which is kind of the big thing that these cars are missing, is the ability to adjust camber. So we think we can come out with some really nice products for a good price. Probably market leading as far as competitors go. We hope to have something like that out by the end of the year. That's our goal. Flex fuel updates for the RS3. We talk about this every week.
Yeah, it's another one.
Nothing new since last week. It's on the schedule. We're just finishing up some things right now. Mm-hmm. Nothing new to update other than we'll be working in the future.
Yep.
I saw someone post a 350 wheel horsepower dyno chart on a Mustang dyno with your Golf R Stage 191 and another run 300 wheel horsepower on your in-house Mustang dyno. Why is there such a variance? Golf R Stage 1.
Yep.
We rate 295.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer because dynos, they're going to vary depending on how it's calibrated, the conditions at the time, how much airflow it's got, when it was done.
Different car.
Likely a different car. So
everything's different except the calibration.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. So would you expect everything to be the same if everything was different except one thing? That's probably a bigger variation than I would expect to see, but it's possible that car. I mean, we were plagued by the fact that our in-house AJ TTRS car made
he's like the happiest AJ.
It made like 50 more wheel at about this power level than any other car we had tested. So all our initial advertised power numbers, none of our customers could even get close to, even though the car actually made that power.
Yep.
So sometimes you see one car is way healthier than another, and then there's all the other variables: the day, the temperature, the air density, the tires, the air pressure in the tires. Some people really don't believe that tires can make a difference on a dyno, but we know that it does. It's a trick that we used to use in dyno
weird.
competitions.
The interface to the dyno.
Yeah, it's the thing that absorbs energy when you're driving down the road. Something it also affects the energy that's transferred to the dyno roller as well. So I mean, if that car is anywhere near here, I'd invite them to come here, and we can possibly consider checking it out.
It was in
Yeah.
It was.
It's just so hard because so many different dynos run different. If it was at World
Racing.
World Racing's dyno
really
it was a Mustang, but we found it was very happy.
Well, we had the same
Very-
issue with our S3. We did our R460. We did a magazine competition down there, and we ran in the whole world. I mean, we made a great number on that dyno.
It was about 50 wheel up from.
And we couldn't get anywhere close to that, but we put the number out there because it was in the
published
magazine.
out there,
Yeah, we didn't put it out there; the magazine did, and of course we referenced to it because it's out there. But yeah. So, and I'm not saying any. I'm just saying there's many documented cases, or the reality is many shops inflate numbers. Now, I'm not saying this is what happened. I don't know where this person went, and I'm not saying World Racing's purposefully doing that, but their dyno does read really high. But and I mean, frankly, I would suggest World Racing should have fixed it years ago, but they haven't. But here's the reality: is you have a customer walk into your shop, they put their dyno on the car, and you hand
Car on the dyno.
you put the car on the dyno, and you run it, and you hand them two charts. One says 300 wheel, one says 350 wheel. Which charts do you think is going to make the customer happier?
Yeah.
That's
a really hard.
That happens a lot, and it's kind of a vicious cycle of it's dishonest, but at the same time, it's people love to think that their car makes more power than
They like the bigger numbers, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to convince otherwise that a lower number, even with the exact same car, the exact same power, the exact same everything, a lower number on a different dyno, they're going to blame the dyno.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you go to the doctor and you're actually 5'7" and they tell you you're 5'9", you're gonna be like, yes, I knew it was taller. So, anyways,
But yeah, I mean,
it's hard to say.
Our dyno, we went through this when we first set it up. The Mustang, we had engineers from Mustang come out, and when we were initially getting it calibrated, we've validated it against a pile of stock cars, electric cars. It's been tested against other dynos in our area, and the stuff at SEMA that SEMA uses for
carb testing.
for carb testing and power validation,
Which is automotive manufacturer grade calibrated.
and we've matched up, within margin of error against all those. So we feel like what the numbers we're putting out are, you're not going to hit anything lower because it's.
I mean, I would say
no one would fudge things lower generally, but
I would say not only do we feel, we know.
yeah, exactly. There's beyond any other method of testing that's available.
Yeah,
We
have no doubt that our dynos.
We're happy with where it's at.
But keep in mind, different car, different day, different
Like you
conditions.
said, everything is different except one thing. So
And there's this kind of idea that a dyno reads a horsepower, and so all the dynos should read the same exact. That's not true. No two dynos read the same exact power.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just not a thing. There is no way to calibrate all the dynos to each other. What a dyno is there's a load sensor that the engine's torque compresses the sensor. That sensor has to be calibrated, and a certain amount of compression is 1 horsepower.
well, and it's that plus the mathematical calculations for the inertial, right? Because you're spinning up the rollers and the mass as well, which some are inertial only, some are inertial plus load cell, some are very heavily load cell with very light inertia. So there's all kinds of different ways that this could be.
But the problem is a dyno. There's no such thing as a dyno that reads 1 horsepower or 1 torque. That's not a thing. There's all these sensors and components and software and that all calculate what a horsepower is. And if there's any difference, if one calculation is 20% off from the other, you start getting stuff like this. And it's just a couple of keystrokes away from changing the calculation. And some shops dishonestly modify it. We've worked very hard to make it accurate, even to the point of disappointing customers. And they're like,
It's been really, it's always a struggle.
This is what this is the actual power.
People want to see these big numbers, but we don't have a our numbers are accurate to every test we've been able to throw at it. So
Yeah.
It's tough. And then you've got other things like atmospheric compensations and normalizations that try to get applied sometimes depending on given altitudes, and it can throw things way out of whack.
That's a problem with altitude, where the SAE corrections for altitude they're just way off, and so you see a lot of ridiculously big horsepower numbers coming off of dynos and at elevation.
Yeah, if you've got a turbocharged car,
5,000, 8,000 feet, the numbers on the dyno, if they use the corrections, they're just flat on. They're inflated 20% at least, and we've seen that firsthand. We've dynoed a race car in our dyno. At one point, we went to Salt Lake City. We did it once. What was the other place?
Well, we did the Salt Flats one. We did.
And
we did Peak? Yeah, we did the Pikes Peak. The A4.
I dynoed the A4 at both places. We did ADTQ in Salt Lake City.
ADTQ was in Salt Lake.
And then I dynoed the time attack car in what's the city? Colorado Springs. In Colorado Springs, there was a dyno shop, and the numbers that were coming off the time attack A4 it was ridiculous. They weren't right. So I turned off SA corrections, and they were maybe a little bit off from what they should. Maybe they were a little low, but they were much more accurate. So.
Well, it should be lower. I mean, it's got your efficiency's down. Your pressure differentials are all higher for
on a turbo motor, the corrections kind of go out the window.
Yeah, you pick up a lot of it with the turbo usually, unless you're at the end.
If the turbo can't produce as much boost, then you're making less power. Like there's no point in correcting for that. Less boost equals less power. Now, if the turbo is being controlled with a closed loop boost control system, then
it can hit it with a relatively similar amount of efficiency.
The turbo can push the boost control can push the turbo harder. It will spin faster to achieve that higher boost target, but you're still going to make the power. So I think those SA corrections kind of make sense on an NA motor. They work much better for NA motors, but they're absolutely for turbo motors. All right. I don't know. We can go around and look at any of the tuning shops or companies that are at elevation, look at their numbers. You'll see what we're talking about.
Well, and that again, it depends on how they're reporting those numbers. If they're using the corrected numbers, or
All right, this is a good question. Speaking of relationship advice, please help me get my girlfriend to understand my need to buy 034 parts for my S4. Okay, I've got this one answered for years. Modifying your car is about safety. Okay. You want better brakes so you can stop and avoid the danger, and you want more horsepower so you can accelerate away from the danger. It's all about safety. Imagine
cornering, stuff comes at you.
Imagine being in the corner and having your car slide out of control, spin out, and crash, or God forbid, go off a cliff. That's why you need to lower the car. That's why you need sway bars, inserts. You need more camber. These are all for safety. Okay. The fact that maybe you have a little bit more fun at some point is completely beside the point. So stick to the real reason why we do this. It's because of safety.
Yep. We need to do up a logo. It's like 034 motor safety. It's a sport.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Imagine having something dangerous behind you coming up to get you and not being able to accelerate away from it. We see examples of this in movies all the time.
Yeah.
It's why you need more horsepower. So you're welcome. Let us know what you'd like to order. Thank you.
And there's tons of dash cam footage you can find on YouTube where you can see if they just had some more power, some better handling.
Yeah, especially the efficient ones.
Those crashes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the tank is coming up on the freeway behind you, about to run you over. Downshift. That supercharger pulley helps you hit 26 pounds of boost and you're gone. So we need a laugh track. Yeah. It needs to sound like more than one person.
Less creepy.
When designing your motorsport line of products, why are spherical bearings used over bushings? Good question. A spherical bearing is a component where It's a metal on metal interface, essentially. Oh, here we got one here. And so these rod ends, you can see that there's it's a rod end looking up, but it's in all our products. This is actually a spherical here that's held in with a circlip into a machined bore. But there is a very tight, highly toleranced fit between the inner ball and the outer housing. And this ball happens to be Teflon lined, which is a nice feature that the Aurora bearings that we use have. And there's zero slop, zero compliance. So that means if 1 unit of force acts on the center of this, exactly 1 unit of force is transferred to the assembly. And that's what you want in a motorsport or racing application, where you want suspension forces to act directly on the components, eventually directly on the tire.
Yeah, that's actually a really easy way to visualize it is the tire kick test. You go up to a stock like Audi stock front end,
Kick the tire.
You'll see it move and bounce back and forth, upwards of an inch if you get a good kick on you, break your foot. So that's happening, all the time as you're driving. Those wheels are just kind of trying to meet that balance of comfort and quiet and compromise around all the inputs you're giving it and what the road's giving it back. And in a motorsport application or in a more tightly controlled requirement, you need to get rid of that movement. And to do that, you've got to remove the softer bushings, the rubber pieces, anything that's allowed to deflect when it encounters a force.
Yeah, it's just slop.
Yep.
The rubber and the bushings, like Nate said, they add comfort, but they take away from the performance. And something has to give. Everything can't be like metal to metal in a car,
right.
But in a race car, you can get much closer to that. And so that's why we do it for our motorsport line of products. Now, in our Dynamic Plus products, we do use bushings. Now they're stiffer. And so you could consider our Dynamic Plus products a more performance optimized product that still has a lot of the comfort and NVH characteristics of factory parts, but better performance. Not as good as the fully motorsport spherical option, but better, and that's a worthwhile compromise to make on a street car. Speaking of which, this is a new product we just released last week. This is the rear upper control arm for basically all the 5, 6, 7.
We're basically re-releasing this, right? Because we used to have this.
We did have this, but the product we've had on the market for a while has our density rubber bushing on the inside here, and so we removed that for anyone looking for a motorsport option. This product basically allows you to generate more camber in the rear tires, as well as eliminating any compliance or deflection of any kind. So again, if you have 3 degrees of camber, regardless of what forces hit the tire, this arm is going to maintain 3 degrees of camber. It's not going to change. Where rubber bushing could go from 3 to 2 to 1 to it could bounce all around, which is what Nate was describing with the tire kick. So put this on the rear with some of our other spherical parts, and you kick the tire, and the only thing you'll feel compressing is the rubber of the tire. So these are in stock, ready to ship. I think we released them last week. So. And we have 2 versions. So if NVH is a concern for you, then definitely get the one with the rubber bushing, the density rubber bushing. Yeah, it's a density bushing, and we're eliminating the rubber in the rest of the arm. So it's still a great performing part, but you will be able to get that camber, and those kind of high frequency vibrations and sounds will be dampened by the rubber bushing, so those won't go directly into your frame or your chassis. All right. Is there a need for strut mount replacement on B9S4? Do you guys make a density replacement? We are working on one. We will release one. I believe we've researched it, but the cars are still pretty new, so we haven't rushed it to market yet.
There's a life cycle that we kind of have to wait for or plan for on some of these parts, where 99% of them are going to get replaced under warranty to a certain point and age of the car, and then we need to take over beyond that. So yeah, no, we're it's in our development queue.
When running E40 fuel, what has been your experience for oil change intervals?
Really find a need to change anything beyond what it would be a normal, change rate for that application.
I mean, have we found that? I thought there was something that came up that we were thinking that we should do it
Fully 85.
fully 85.
Yeah, fully
Maybe
85. We've talked about doing a little more frequent or changes, but not on E40 on B8 that I've seen.
Yeah, E40 shouldn't be a problem. On full E85, that does get into the oil. And, it may be a good idea to change it. I mean, something you can always do is, send some samples to Blackstone, which is who we use here, and you could send them some samples at various mileage or time intervals, and see what they say. At some point, they're going to say this one needs to be changed, and that could inform you if it's sooner. But I don't think there's a general consensus that it needs to be. I think more importantly is to get your engine up to operating temp often. That's the biggest issue I see with the oil.
Oh yeah, no. If it's just if you start out and drive it 2 miles, you're just putting the water into the crankcase, basically.
When you, and we talked about this before, when you start your motor, the inside of the crankcase fills with warm air, or even hot air, and the block is still cold. So what happens is condensation forms on the inside of the block, and all that water runs down into the oil. It's okay because normally your oil temp is above the boiling point of water, and so that water will convert from liquid to water vapor, and it'll be removed through the crankcase ventilation system. But if you just drive your car for 5 minutes at a time, that water builds and builds, and we've seen cars come in that are just filled with water inside, and of course that the crankshaft emulsifies this water and oil mixture to the point where it drains out and it looks like chocolate syrup or something. It's really bad. So get your engine up to temp, drive it hard, get it hot. It's actually good for your engine. Yeah. But I don't recommend just letting it sit there and idle. I mean, you got to drive it. Yep. What's 034's view on DAZA torque figures and engine reliability? I don't know if we have an official response for this. I'll just say that at stage 2 power levels, that engine torque can exceed the
depending on the calibration stage of 1 or 2, it's just you do have to control boost even on a stock turbo to maintain.
Yeah. So that's
a very common thing on turbo motors.
Yeah. It'd be very easy for an overzealous tuner to ramp the torque peak up too high to the point of bending rods. It's pretty easy to do in a DAZA. Although, I mean, I wouldn't say easy. I mean, you're talking at, a very high power level.
Quite an output level.
They actually have really strong rods in them. And the ECU does a great job of controlling, detonation, things like that.
But the turbo itself is just able to make enough boost down low where it is something, you do have to keep an eye on.
So if you use
the tuner has to keep an eye on.
If you use a relatively inexperienced tuner who doesn't have a lot of experience tuning DAZA motors, we do have them. But if you use someone like that, you could be serving as an experiment for them to find the limit of what the torque limit of the rods are. So there needs to be an active management of torque output to prevent the connecting rings from bending. And it doesn't take much. I mean, a little bend in the rod.
Yeah, we're not
puts a lot of stress on the wrist pin, and the piston fails, and there goes the whole motor. So, it's really important to control the torque limit. We don't need to throw out any numbers, but there is a limit, and you have to stay below it.
Yep.
I think,
and there's some that get away with higher, but it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. A lot of times it shows up as a wrist pin piston failure
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
But it's actually the rod that bends. Can you guys explain what parameters are logged using your logger? The abbreviations are too confusing.
Nope. Yes, we can, but it's the logger is there for us to help and support you guys. It's not there so that, it's not necessarily there so that you can go in and determine, everything yourself. We give it as a tool so that we can review and analyze the data. Those abbreviations are deliberately, we don't make those up. Those are all the factory, either Motronic or Siemens, or if it's depending on how it's done. We don't alter the abbreviations or the naming schemes for very specific reasons, in that we're logging specific data for the calibration purposes or for testing purposes. There's no one answer. The abbreviations are going to change no matter what engine you're running, what ECU is in there, what how it's being logged and what data is being logged.
We want to be clear. Our logger, like Nate said, is a tool for us to support the customer. It's not a logging tool that's created for everyone to log their engines
and know exactly what is going.
Yeah. It's not designed to be like a user friendly thing. So you have questions about why your car is running a certain way. You'd like us to evaluate the current health of your engine, things like that. You just need to get the logger, do the logs, and send them to us. And that's what our current logging program is all about. It's not designed to be, its own tool so that you can, not to say that we wouldn't develop a product at some point, or maybe we want to do that, but what we've currently put out there is our concerted effort to help support customers and give us information about what's going on with their car. So just trying to set expectations. That's the effort we've put out so far. So, yeah.
Yep. It's tough because it's one of those things where if you need to know what the abbreviations are, well, you probably don't. And if you don't know what the abbreviations are, or how to use them, or what the data means, then what are you going to do with the abbreviations anyway? It's a tough one to answer. It's kind of the information is intended for a certain purpose, for us to review and for us to help you out. So going beyond that, it gets trickier to be a consumable for.
It's kind of like when Windows is like, hey, your printer's not working, you want us to troubleshoot it, and that like black box pops up and there's all these like letters and text. Like, you're not supposed to know what all that stuff says.
I hope we're doing a little better than Windows support.
I was trying to come up with an analogy of like, at the end,
it's not a hex error.
At the end, Windows says your printer's good or it isn't, but it's all the stuff that happens in between is for us to help you. Maybe, I think if there was a tool like a lot of people want, we would have to sell it. It would come at a cost.
Yeah.
And then it would have a nice, easy to use interface that
to some extent
is designed for the end user.
The problem here is like that information though still needs to be, if you're going to use that data, that log information, you need to know what variables inside the ECU it's even referencing. So if you're just arbitrarily naming it things, you then have to know what you're then arbitrarily naming it to that actually means this thing inside the ECU that you're trying to pay attention to. So changing the names to something more intuitive to you, it doesn't necessarily help anyone that's actually calibrating these using a logger for calibration.
Yeah. All right. Will dynamic plus lowering springs cause undue wear on stock shocks or struts? I would say no. To be fair, the car is that much lower, and so this is the shock or strut could bottom out more often in really like impactment.
Yeah, maybe, but it's got a higher spring rate too. So
but I'm just trying to be fair and not gloss over anything. But no, I think we had a good clip.
We did
about this last week where
where
we're balancing all these different variables with our suspension components. We're not just trying to dump it because the lower center of gravity is better. So we have to balance out what's the most we can lower the center of gravity while ensuring that the shock is still working in its optimal range, while ensuring that the ride is still good, while ensuring that suspension geometry is within optimal range. So and that's just a few things that we're thinking about. So, but no, you can put them on your car. We've had a number of cars that we've leased. We ran our springs the whole time. We tracked, did all kinds of stuff, and then we just took everything off and returned it to the dealership. So
Yeah, and then everything was.
we no questions asked. No issues.
Not any
So,
issues with shocks here.
yeah, no, you're safe. Someone's asking about Dynamic Plus springs for a B7A4. Eesh. I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard that request. Those cars are pretty old. I mean, if we could sell them, we would love to make them. But it's an older application, so I don't. Mark, write it down. Lots of updates.
Yeah, people asking where all the products.
4.0 T-mount updates, nothing new. We're still waiting for the samples. B9 3.0 T tuning updates, going very well.
Yep.
We have been on the dyno with the car for a few weeks now, and we're progressing very well.
Mm-hmm.
We're finding out what a lot of the limits are, and I think we're quite happy with the progress.
It's going really well.
Yeah. So that's exciting. B9 RS5 intake updates. It's coming. We're simply waiting on a few of the components. You may have heard air filters have been a beep this year for us. Our main air filter supplier is a US-based company, and they've been hit with all the COVID delays, and then their facility was shut down for a couple weeks because of COVID, a COVID outbreak at their facility. So, we just
sold a ton of intakes.
Yeah, we sold a lot of intakes during Black Friday. We just sell a lot of intakes anyways, and so it's been a challenge for us to get the filters. That's been the main delay. So, but I think there was some commotion this week. We shipped 50 of our B8X34s, which we were happy to. We still have a lot of people waiting, which we understand. But it's this air filter issue. So B9 2.0 T updates, nothing new to report there. I don't know. Do we want any like beta testers or?
No, not at this
Would that
time.
help?
We've got some other updates we're doing on the server side and some flashing stuff we're finalizing. It's kind of mixed in with some other updates.
DAZA surge tank updates, that's going well. We're currently manufacturing all the components for the product. We don't have a release date, but we just got a bunch of the billet machined parts, samples machined up. It's going to be a really beautiful product, something I'm really excited to release. So that will be coming. Super duper charger updates. We're simply waiting for the production run of the cast housings. There will be expected power gains. We will publish those. None of the throttle body upgrades produce big power gains across the band. So you could expect to see some improvement or gain in power from about 6,000 RPM starting, at about there. That will grow as the engine revs higher.
Yep.
So it could be you might see the first horsepower gain at 5,800 RPM or something like that, and then you'll just see the dyno curve with the super duper charger just continue to climb from that point. So it'll be a worthwhile upgrade.
Yeah, and that's just a factor of any intake restriction reduction.
Yeah.
You're going to see those benefits the more and more air you fly.
Are pops and bangs bad for your engine health? Generally, no. I mean, we control it with the ECU so that it's not bad for your engine.
Yeah, I mean, they're monitored, or the ECU has calculated exhaust gas temperatures, and we try and we switch off the pops and bangs if we're outside of that range.
And we don't recommend running it with
It's
cats.
it's some right, and it's something that yes, you're going to have more fuel use, you're going to have more exhaust gas, temperature increases due to it as a side effect. I haven't seen any detriment to the engine's health at all on any vehicle we've done them on.
No. I mean, it's definitely good for your swag factor. Yeah. It's going to bump you up a couple points.
And it comes back to safety. People know you're there.
Yeah, that's right. No one will run into you, that's for sure, because they don't know you. Someone's asking, what are your thoughts on Boot Mod 3 for BMW?
It's similar to what we just talked about for the DS1. It's a flashing and calibration technology. It's not really any different than
It sounds fun.
yeah,
We've never used it.
yeah, we've never used it, but it's from what
We'll be-
I've seen, it's just another flashing
We'll be
flashing tech.
looking into all that. Do you guys have any interest in creating a product similar to Cobb Access Port for live data displays or simplified tune swaps, like switching fuel maps while staying with a given stage, for example, going from stage 291 to stage 2 E40?
I don't know that we would do a discrete hardware product like the Cobb Access Port. If anything, it would probably move to something more like an iPhone or a smart device that you've already got.
Sure.
With a wireless connect. Just because who doesn't have a smartphone these days that's going to be working on these, or something similar at least.
But within that, that's something we can do.
Yeah. No, we've talked about that. That's doing our own hardware and loader. I don't think this day and age, that would make the most sense for development resources. Cobb has had that device for a very long time before smartphones were a thing, before this ubiquitous access to basically a computer in your pocket was a thing. So these days, you've got a smartphone, Android or iPhone that's connected to anything you want, and
I guess we have a special request for a birthday wish, huh? No? Okay. Is it trolling?
Yes.
What's it mean?
We'll discuss it.
yeah, it's a Simpsons thing.
Oh, is it? Okay. I mean, is it Hugh Jass?
No.
We could wish Hugh Jass a birthday. Anything else? Okay. Will you be supporting a hybrid IS-38 for the Mark 7 GTI?
Yep.
We believe we will be. We have been doing some polling recently, and I think we have at least one option that we will support, because it seems like actually hybrids are very popular. So, yes. In addition to IS-38, which we will be doing very soon.
Certainly be doing that.
Will we be seeing BMW tunes in the future? Yes. Don't ask for updates. We have a long list of Audi tuning applications that we're working on. However, I think it's very likely in 2022, next year, that we will start bringing some BMW tunes to market.
Yep.
So
We'll likely be starting on them this year.
yeah,
I don't.
and I mean,
That we'll be releasing any yet this year.
no, I don't think we will release any. We did just acquire a BMW, our first in-house development car. We've been developing BMW parts for a while, but not with an in-house car. So that will afford us the ability to get much deeper into product development and engineering, including tuning options. So things are progressing well with BMW, and we're moving more and more in that direction every day. So, Am I charged taxes, duties on software for international shipments? No. There should be no.
Well, not on the soft. Well, unless it's delivered as a hard good. There's a bunch of weird regulation around it. But
There's no sales tax. I'll say that.
we do have to. Everything we have is coded out and itemized. It depends on the country.
No, but there's no.
But the software itself, I don't think it's because it's
just to be clear, we do not charge any taxes or fees or duties on any international shipments. That is completely between you and your country where you live. If you buy a $500 tune on our website, you will be charged $500. If there's any shipping for a cable, then you'll pay for that as well. But we will not charge you any taxes or duties. Your country may. There's a lot of countries out there, so we can't say, well, you didn't even say what country you're from, but that's completely between you and your country. We don't control duties outside of the U.S. Now, in the U.S., if you buy it, like what Nate said is true, our website calculates sales tax based on state, county, down to your street address. Sales tax is varies and will be determined. So yeah, international duties. Sometimes customers get really upset that they're getting charged duties. It sucks for us because it has nothing to. We don't benefit from it.
Completely out of our control.
It's not like Lithuania sends us a check for $100 when they charge you $100 of duty. So. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you for joining us again. Thanks for the great questions. And we look forward to hanging out with you next week. Cheers.